Hello, and welcome to episode 40 of the Postcast. This is Rabbi Shmuel Posner and myself, Seth Hellman. Rabbi, how you doing today?
Thank God I'm well. How are you? You look good. You look happy. You look relaxed. It is
Today
Tu B'Shvat.
was,
It's the
it is Tu
fifth,
B'Shvat.
right? Tu B'Shvat. So it's a time to be. It's a sort of a holiday. We actually don't say Tachnun on Tu B'Shvat.
Interesting.
Tomorrow is Thursday, and there's no Tachnun. You know the joke about the guy's like this. He said, the rabbi was telling another guy. He said, if only the Gentiles would know the joy of not saying Tachnun on Thursday, they would convert just for that. So tomorrow's no Tachnun. It's very fascinating because the holiday of Chamisha B'Shvat, 15th of Shvat, has to do, it's a technical thing. We have the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, the four Rosh Hashanahs, and it's very technical stuff. The tithing. When does the old year end, the new year start? You have to separate the produce from that year. That's all it is. There's no mention of anything spiritual whatsoever. There's no reason not to say Tachnun. Why? It's only when you look at the world of mysticism that somehow it comes into, because there's a pasuk in the Torah that says like this. In Chumash Devarim, I think it's in the end of Parsha Kisave, or Kisave, yeah. And it says, when you go to war and you lay siege to a city, you shouldn't cut down trees that are fruit-giving trees. Why? Because is a tree a man that you go to do war against? Ki ha'adam eitz ha'sadeh? Is the tree a man? Is man a tree? The Gemara doesn't quotes that pasuk not as a question but as a statement. Ki ha'adam eitz ha'sadeh. Man is a tree of the field, and says if it's a tree that gives fruit, don't cut it down. If it's a person who is righteous and does good deeds, follow him, connect to him. If not, then cut it off. So we see that the Gemara takes that pasuk and uses it literally. Man is a tree of the field. That comes along mysticism, I believe it's Arizal, and says, whoa, let's think about this. Man is a tree. What does that mean? And so one of the classic things is roots is faith, trust in Hashem. That's the foundation. The trunk and the branches are Torah study, and the fruit of the mitzvahs, because the Torah, the tree, part of the tree is Torah. That's part of the person. Then you have the fruit, and the fruit are what other people can benefit from. It affects the world. Another little lesson is that we talk about the 7 kinds that Eretz Yisrael is praised for, which is wheat and barley, dates, figs, pomegranates, olives, and left one out. So the first 2 of the 7 are wheat and barley. We don't talk about that on Chamisha B'Shvat. Why? Because wheat and barley is something that you live on it. You live on bread. You don't live on fruit. Fruit is an idea of pleasure. So we talk about the 15th of Av 15th of Shvat is telling us you should serve Hashem like fruit with pleasure. It shouldn't be like a burden I have to do with pleasure. Another little insight to that. And there is, I think it got a revival in recent decades. The Tuat Seder. Tuat Seder is, you actually have, there's a whole order of things that you say. And I'm opening the door now because there's a program downstairs and they can't figure out how to open the door. Just turn the handle. There you go. Okay. So Tuat Seder, you have 4 parts to it. And the 4 parts relate to the 4 worlds. Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asira. We say this in the morning davening. We say this. The soul that you've given to me is pure. You created it. You formed it. You blew it into us. So pure is the first. Created, formed, made. And so it goes from the most spiritual down to the most tangible, the physical. And there's all kinds of psukim from the Torah where it talks about fruits and field and trees. And then there's an eating and drinking component to it, obviously. The drinking is wine. You start off with white wine. Then you have white wine with a little bit of red wine in it. Then you have red wine with a little bit of white wine. Then you have red wine. So the white is more spiritual, the red is more tangible. Start off with pure white and off with pure red. And in between you go through those two stages. And then the fruit that you eat has to do with the peel. You start with the fruit that you eat the peel. For example, grapes. Nobody peels grapes. Then you go to you gotta remember this. There's a peel that you do eat, and then there's the shell of a nut. And there's one more in between there somewhere. And the whole idea of the peel and what's inside it in Chassidus talks about there's that which is holy, and they talk about the world of klipa. Klipa means a shell, the outside. This world is known as the world full of klipa. The world of klipa. Why? Because we know that God created the whole world, but you look at the world doesn't scream God. The world screams, I am, I exist. So that's the shell that covers it. Now there's two types of shells, essentially. One is a soft one is a hard one. How much a walnut, to get to the nut inside, you have to smash it. If you talk about a grape, it's very easy. You can even actually eat it. You talk about an orange, you could peel it off. Some of the peels you could eat. Orange peels people eat, banana peels you don't eat. So there you have two different kinds of peels. And that's our interaction with the world is dealing with the world of klipa. What part of the physical world can we elevate? What part of the physical world is actually godly? So a Sefer Torah is godly, right? Things that are forbidden are forbidden. Godliness is so deeply concealed in it, you can't access it at all. And then most of the world is in between. You can't access it if you try, if you work hard at it. Or sometimes you don't have to work hard. Every time you pick up something that's kosher, make a bracha and have in mind that you're going to be able to serve Hashem with the energy you get from the food. That's elevating the klipa. And so the Seder goes, and you have these four different stages from the most holy to the most not holy, not yet holy. So that's a little bit about Tu B'Shvat. So we get some feedback from the Pos-cast, which we do appreciate. We have to remind people, we do appreciate your feedback. We don't know who you are if you're listening to it, unless you let us know that you are. So we've mentioned some people that we know that listen because they let us know. Some people wanted to have honorable mention. I can't just mention that. You have to be a mensch to get mentioned. But it seemed that the Farbrengen, the birthday Farbrengen, people had a certain inclination towards because we spoke about the Rebbe and things like that. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking a couple of things that would be worthwhile of sharing. You know, my daughter in Israel, she messaged me last night. I guess she's learning Tanya. She said, why do we have to know what a tzaddik and a Rosh and a Beinoni are? Right? Tzaddik is the righteous, the Rosh is the not righteous, the Beinoni is the middle one. Why do we have to know what a tzaddik is? I just finished a Tanya class, and the question was, can a person reach perfection? Does God expect us to reach perfection? And the whole point of the Tanya is it's called the book of the Beinoni. So God is not looking for perfection. He's looking for people who are able to control what they do, thought, speech, and action, even though inwardly they may have different inclinations and they have to struggle with it constantly. The tzaddik doesn't have that. Tzaddik has transformed any animal instinct into holiness. Now, that means literally not that you don't think about, you don't do or say. You don't even think about things that are not 100% godly. So you walk by a bakery and you don't see like, oh, that looks like a nice cake. Boom! You're thinking about cake and how nice it is. Fat. That's not a tzaddik. Who's going to reach that level? Forget about, you didn't even think, oh, I want to eat the cake. Just like, oh, the cake is attractive. It looks nice. If you say, I think, oh, it would be nice to eat, forget it. You're totally off the rails. You've plunged off the tzaddik plateau.
And God forbid someone uses ketchup.
Have we spoken about this before? So what's the point of talking about the tzaddik? Which is a very good question. And it's a question that most people that I've ever studied Tanya with ask that question. Why are you telling us about the tzaddik? We're not going to get there anyway. So my response to her was, first of all, it's amazing to know what a tzaddik is. And who is a tzaddik? And what is it? When you finally understand who the tzaddik is, like, wow, that's amazing. So you think about anybody from Moshe Rabbeinu to Rabbi Akiva, to the Rambam, to the Rebbe. What is a tzaddik? And you get an understanding that their whole perspective on life is a different perspective. Now here's the fascinating thing about the Rebbe. You would think about a tzaddik who has a different perspective on life would be secluded from the world, which is understandable. I don't want to deal with all these people. None of them, nobody else is a tzaddik, or extremely few people are tzaddikim. So I'm constantly dealing with people who are, the life is defined by the physical and the pleasure seeking. Like, what do I want to deal with this for? That's one kind of tzaddik. But then there's a greater level of tzaddik who can tolerate people where they are. Like Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe dealt with the Jews. And when we read the Torah, they're complaining. What do they want? They wanted water, they wanted food, they wanted meat. And Moshe Rabbeinu deals with it. Okay, meat was a little bit too much for him. He had to assign 70 elders. But everything else, he dealt with it. So this is a tzaddik who doesn't get thrown from his personal connection from Hashem, even though he's reaching down and connecting to people where they are in their position. And that's really, we call it Rebbe, Reish B'nai Yisrael, like the head feel what's going on in the foot. The head's a head, but it's able to connect to what's going on in the foot. So I said that's one thing, is to understand the power and the amazingness of knowing that there's a tzaddik and why the words of a tzaddik are important and all that kind of thing. So the other thing is to know, like when you learn Tanya and it talks about things that are permissible, and if you do it for pleasure, then you lower it into the level of the forbidden. And even if you do it just because if a person eats, just I'm hungry, I'm eating. I don't think about the food and how much I enjoy it. I'm just hungry and I'm eating. That also is not in the realm of holiness. It's in the realm of the self. I'm hungry. Now that's like, so you think about it like, whoa, we're constantly being not godly. Now, not anti-godly is something else. Anti-godly is doing something Hashem said, don't do it. But not godly is also not good. You're disconnected from Hashem at that moment. And so I can call him a friend, I call him a mentor, call him a teacher, Rabbi Shalom Charatanov, who's in Crown Heights. He's a Crown Heights guy. He's Crown Heights. But he knows Chassidus and teaches Chassidus a lot. And he's able to explain it and connect to the students, the Bachram he teaches. And whenever I see him, I any question I have in the back of my mind, I just, what else is this? So I once told him about this. He said, you got it wrong. You can't teach to people that. You're teaching people that every time they sit down to eat and they enjoy the food, they're a bad person. Well, not bad, but there's something wrong with them. They're just, you're not going to get people to become more observant when you tell them that. You got to flip it the other way around. See, every time you interact with the world, you could literally bring God into the world. Like, whoa, amazing. It's so simple. You go to a supermarket, how are you feeling? Baruch Hashem, thank God I'm fine. Boom, you brought God into there. It's amazing, right? Or you sit down to eat and you think what the bracha means. What? Baruch, Ato, just literally what the meaning of the bracha is. And actually the word Baruch, in Chassidus talks about the word Baruch, we find this in the Mishnah, it's like grafting. It's called, that's the word, that's a similar word in Mishnah. So Baruch means you're grafting God into the world. And who you addressing? Baruch Ata, you, God is like right in front of you. Then you, Hashem Elokeinu, God, our God. So you're really bringing God. You just take a thought, a moment to think when you're making the bracha, like, whoa, you brought God into the world. So don't tell them how bad they are every time they eat because they're hungry. Tell them how amazing an opportunity every time they eat to bring God into the world. So that's what you learn from Tanya. Tanya's not supposed to depress you and say, oh my God, I'm never going to reach this. It's supposed to broaden the whole perspective. Torah is not about do's and don'ts. It's about a relationship to Hashem. And that's constant. That's always. And don't worry, no one's judging you for what you're doing. Just do the best you can every moment. So that's, I think, an amazing, amazing thing. And that was the thing that the Rebbe always, I just was watching my cousin from Connecticut, Yisrael Darren. He was talking something with the Bachram, whatever. But he said, he once went into Yechidus to the Rebbe, and he said to the Rebbe, what should I do? I can't concentrate when I daven. In Hebrew, it's called machshava zaris. Foreign thoughts, not nasty thoughts. You start davening, start thinking about a baseball game or a hockey game, whatever. So how do I concentrate on that? And the Rebbe said to him, you should look in the siddur, daven from the siddur. This is the brilliant advice. Simple, but brilliant. If you're looking at the words and you're concentrating on reading the words, I had a kid in class, remember this, I know who he is, I'm not going to mention his name. Back in I think it was the fifth grade, and his father was a very devout chassid, and he would daven by heart, and close his eyes and daven like that. So this kid in fifth grade was davening like that. So the teacher came over and said, what are you doing? You know the davening by heart? He said, I don't know the davening by heart. So why are you davening like that? That's my father davens. He said, your father knows the davening by heart, so he can close his eyes. You need to look in the siddur. So even something as simple as looking in the siddur. So you think the Rebbe would give this brilliant, earth-shattering advice to be able to deal with the person on the simple level. So one time, when the Rebbe would go at a shul, he would go make with his hand, like that. I remember one time I was a kid, and I was standing outside 770. I know it was Sukkot, and I think I was standing either on this by the sidewalk in front of 770, or maybe in front of near the door going into 770, like in between the sukkah, the Rebbe's sukkah, and the building. I do remember this thing. Nobody was there. The Rebbe came, and there was nobody else there. Maybe somebody was holding the door open. I don't remember that, but there was no crowds. And so I was standing there like 10 feet, the Rebbe's path is over here, like 10 or 15 feet down. I'm standing there. Where do I go? And the Rebbe looked, I went like that. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I can't start singing. I froze. But I thought it was such a wonderful and beautiful, it was Sukkot, Cholamoid Sukkot. It was like a good yontif. Instead of saying good yontif, everyone went like that. Be happy, be uplifted. It's Sukkot. Now, what effect did it have? I don't know. But many decades later, won't get into that, I still remember that moment where the Rebbe just went like that, and that was like an uplifting moment. And I think that's like just very, very descriptive of how the Rebbe, with emotion, with a word, was able to lift people up. And that's a tzaddik, whose every motion is whole. That's why we're so obsessed. The Rebbe said this, the Rebbe said that. How did he say? What did he say? No, that's all instructive to us. And I want to put in this idea that we can talk about this, and then there's the effort that we put into to really make it part of ourselves. So when we talk about the Rebbe, we always talk about the Rebbe's teachings. We talk about Chamishas B'Shvat. There's teaching that Rebbe gave, and that what's the chassidus of what's the real message, which a little bit what we mentioned before. And just in general, all of the talks of the Rebbe, that when you learn them, you gain knowledge, you gain guidance in life, you also gain an insight into the Rebbe's approach to things, approach to the world, approach to Jews, approach to non-Jews. The situation in Eretz Yisrael, we got to find the literature where the Rebbe spoke about it. Even though he spoke about it 30, 40 years ago, it's so relevant today. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. There was a war in 48, 56, 67, 73, 80, 82, and on and on and on. And there's a fundamental question. What is the response? And it starts with something very simple. What's our connection to Eretz Yisrael? Why that land? And if you ask different Jews, you get different answers. Oh, historically, Balfour, this, that. Rebbe's answer, Avram Avinu. That's where it starts. It starts in the Torah. And I remember hearing the Rebbe say, going to the UN, they all believe in the Torah. He even said the word Bible. And tell them that Eretz Yisrael it says it in Chumash. Anybody deny that it's there? The truth. You got to go with the truth. So maybe just an example of how the to understand, not just like, oh, we're pro-Israel. What does that mean? What does that mean? Of course we care about Israel. And very much the Rebbe instructed the Israeli government how they had to approach it. And then, and once first knowing why Israel belonged to us, then the reason why we must protect the land, which is very simple. The Rebbe was very simple. Security of the Jewish people. Whatever brings security. I was just listening to somebody give a talk on this, and he said that I don't think this is published, but anything anybody says now it could get anywhere. That the Rebbe said to somebody, if giving, this is decades ago, if giving back Yerushalayim with the Har HaBayis, with the Temple Mount, giving it away would save one Jewish life, we absolutely have to do it. The Rebbe's principle was, we need to protect the land to save Jewish lives. We cannot give up. That's why the Rebbe was not for the Camp David Accords and surely not for Oslo. Why? Will it increase security or not increase security? And here we see clearly, no one can argue. The leaving Gaza, we're dealing with that now. And we've been doing that for the past 17 years. But now we see clearly, like, oh my golly, whoever came up with that idea, explain to me what you were thinking. That was a terrible mistake. So that was. So I'm saying, to understand the Rebbe, you have to get into his thinking, to understand how he approached things, and it's fascinating, and it's exhilarating because you got such a clear perspective on how to approach things. For me, on a personal level, in addition to this, when I lived in New York with my parents, my mother, Blessed Mary, and my father, Sein Gesund, they moved in 1964, maybe 63. My sister will tell me. They moved from New Jersey, from Vineland, where I was born. We went to the Bronx, and then to Borough Park, which is part of Brooklyn. But it wasn't Crown Heights. Why not Crown Heights? Because Crown Heights in the 60s was not Crown Heights it is today. And for whatever reason, they just couldn't find a house they can buy to live. So we lived in Borough Park. Borough Park to Crown Heights, where we lived on 56th Street in Fort Hamilton, was about an hour and 10-minute walk to 770. Walking at a brisk pace. And we lived at home. The idea of go stay in Crown Heights. The community was so small. Where would we stay? By strangers? We didn't have any relatives living in Crown Heights. So the idea of staying in Crown Heights simply didn't exist for us. So if we wanted to go to Crown Heights, we would, during the weekday for Bremen, we'd go there, I mentioned this last, by car, by train. And during the weekday, on Shabbos, you had to walk. And we wanted to get there early enough to be able to find your place at the Fabrengen. But we couldn't leave Borough Park. We had to daven Shachris. And my mother was insisting we come home and eat Shabbos lunch. Of course, it was accelerated. In Borough Park, they started davening at 9 o'clock. By 11 o'clock, they were done. So we came home. By 12 o'clock, we were done with lunch. We were able to leave, and we got to 7:70 at 1:10. Shabbos Fabrengen started at 1:30. So it was fine. It wasn't, but we wanted to get there as early as possible to make sure we could secure our place. So, and I did that from before my bar mitzvah. I don't remember how old I was when I started. Was I 8 or 9? But it was young. It was so young that I didn't understand what the Rebbe was talking about, not just because of the content was of deep, but I didn't understand the Yiddish. And the Rebbe's Yiddish is not just Yiddish. He's quoting from Chumash, from Gemara, from Chassidus, and mixing those words in. So I had no idea. And I didn't really have a good place. In 770, at a Fabrengen, there were set places. On the pyramids that you see going up on the sides, every person knew exactly where. You could have like unlocked the door 10 minutes before the Fabrengen, everybody would walk in and find their place. And it was an honor system. Everybody knew the place. You knew who stood in front of you, you knew who stood in the back of you, and if some stranger walked in and said, "Excuse me, that's my place," and it was understood, okay, you got to leave. And there were areas that just anybody could stand. So it wasn't like you had the place to be there. But there was those sections of standing on the bench and stuff, that was all set places. I didn't have a place. So what happened was, when I went to camp in Montreal, Moshe Nachman Borenstein was my counselor. I don't know why. I never really thought about it until like this week. But he was from Montreal, and he studied in Yeshiva in Montreal. But for some reason, maybe he had come to 770 already. I don't know. Next time I see him, I'll ask him. He had a place on the bleachers, which was on to the Rebbe's left, going all the way up. And he said, "You know what?" He was my counselor. He said, I was 12 years old then. He said, "If you want, you can take my place in 770. So even if you had a place and you left to learn somewhere else, whenever you came back to 770, you can reclaim your place. That was part of the honor system. And you can give it to somebody else." So he gave me his place, but I was scared. Like, it was, even though looking now it's laughable, but it was like 10 feet off the floor. I was worried. So my brother had a place that was not on the floor, but on a bench. That I felt more secure there. So I said to him, "You take the place over there, I'll take the place over here." So when we came to 770, I knew right away to go to my bench. Sometimes the bench wasn't there. I had to go find one and schlep it over with somebody. And I had my place there. And even then, when I was 12, 13, 14, I didn't understand the Rebbe's talks. When you read them inside now, you can see they're complicated. You can't and the Rebbe's speaking, and he's talking about subjects that you didn't prepare. You don't know what he's going to talk about. Okay, if it's this Shabbos, the Rebbe would talk about Tu B'Shvat was this week. You talk about Parsha B'Shalach. But what detail, what angle, you didn't know. And I stood there listening the whole time with not understanding somewhat, but definitely couldn't repeat it to anybody. I knew the general subject, etc., etc. And why my friends, some of my classmates would be outside playing. Why was I not playing? Because I walked an hour and 10 minutes, and then I had to go home for an hour and 10 minutes. So of course, I stood there the whole time. Even when I didn't have a place, I stood there because I put the effort in to be there, and that's why. So I'm just saying that to gain an appreciation of something and of the Rebbe and other people, it takes amount of putting effort into understanding what it is. For me, it was physical effort. Otherwise, and now I've grown up, and through those years, I realized that it's not just physical effort is enough to make you want to be there, and then it grows on you, and then when you intellectually you get even more connected to it because it comes through your head. You become more connected. You understand what it really is, and so that's part of the answer. Knowing who the Rebbe is knowing what he stands for. Of course, all the miracle stories are wonderful and great. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. But that's not what it's all about. What it's about is the understanding of how the Rebbe approaches things in the world. So that's my message to the listeners. There's so many ways to learn now. And in fact, I'll give a plug here for the PLS. PLS is Project Likutei Sichos. You can look it up. There's a website called Project Likutei Sichos. They came up with a schedule to learn all the Sichos of the Rebbe. Now remember, there's 39 published volumes. And it goes by, Breish, Shmois, Vayikra, Midbar, and then Varim, and then it repeats a few times. So they do 2 Sichos a week. Now what they do? They encourage people all over the world to learn those sichos that week. You learn other ones as well, different talks of the Rebbe. These are published talks of the Rebbe. But those two, like everybody's learning it together. And there's a number of teachers that give classes, public classes. The Chabad on campus shluchim have one of the guys, actually the shliach in Rochester, Asher Yaris, he leads the learning of the sicha. If he's not around, someone else takes it over. And so they have it's a WhatsApp group or something, some kind of chat, where all these different teachers, some are, public, some are not public, just teachers. Some people teach in the shul, some of them are on the website. The public Project website has those teachers with their recordings. And so you can just sit down with a book, as my friend Josh Dornbush in Panama says, he learns a sikh every week. He learns, there's 2 different teachers there. He learns each sikh, the 2 sikhs for the week, just from the recording. Of course, the advantage of the recording is you can, push up the speed a little bit, and that's how you can, so you can get to learn the sikh every week. And in addition to that, they also have a synopsis, like a 10-minute synopsis. So even after you learn the sikha, or if you didn't learn the sikha, you get a good taste what it's all about. And so that's the plug. To get to know the Rebbe is to know his teachings. And the Rebbe spoke about this also in connection to the 15th of Shvat, that the tree is connected to Torah, and the fruit, the pleasure, all these different things. But it's a time it's a good time, especially now. It's winter time. It's cold. Stay at home. Open your computer and learn a sikha.
Beautiful. And with that, that'll do it for episode 40 of the Postcast. Rabbi Shmuel Posner, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great Shabbos, everyone.
And a wonderful Chamisha Asar B'Shvat.
Amen.